welcome and thank everyone for joining for our first online listening event. At this event, we'll get the opportunity to hear directly from some trainee pharmacists and find out what your experiences were of the June registration assessment. I sincerely apologize again for the bad experiences some of you candidates had. I want to reassure you it is our top priority to fully understand what happened and to take firm and considered actions in response. With that in mind, we are particularly grateful to the candidates who are taking part tonight. We really appreciate your willingness and openness to talk to us and share some of your personal accounts of what happened to you. We want this meeting to give you, the candidates, the opportunity to feedback directly to GPhC staff and council members. Would also like to build understanding about the actions we're taking in response to the issues so far and address any other key areas where there are still some questions and concerns. Tomorrow after the listening exercise, the council will be meeting, having another emergency meeting, and will be reflecting on what we hear today as well. We are aware that this is a really stressful time, especially as you all wait for your assessment results. We are pleased, therefore, to be joined by Riven from Pharmacist Support, who will be giving advice on managing mental health and well-being. From the GPhC, we have some of our council members here who are keen to hear firsthand from candidates. I will let them briefly introduce themselves. Firstly, we have Amir Safdar.
Thank you, Gisela. My name's Amir Safdar. I'm a hospital pharmacist. I've been doing pre-registration or foundation year training for over 20 years, and having been going to the registration assessments ever since in terms of venues, and have loads of experience with the exam itself and the challenges that trainee pharmacists face when it comes to this type of exam. Thank you.
Thank you. Yusuf Ahmad.
Thank you, Gisela. Yusuf Ahmad here, pharmacist with a mixed portfolio background, council member, and equally the comments that Gisela started with resonate with every single member. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Anne Jacqueline.
Hello, my name is Anne Jacqueline, and I apologise my camera isn't working today, but I do look better like this. I'm a pharmacist member of council, and my background is predominantly in hospital pharmacy at local and national level. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thank you. Dr. Rima Makarim.
I'm Rima Makarim. I am a lay member of the council. I spend a lot of time on boards in the NHS, including an integrated care system, and pharmacists are obviously critical to the success of that. So I'm very interested in hearing about your experiences today.
Thank you, Rima. Rosemary Parr.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I'm Rosemary Parr. I'm a pharmacist member of the council, and started in hospital pharmacy and then went into education and then laterally in government in Scottish pharmacy as well. So again, looking forward to hearing about all of your experience this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Penny Mee Bishop.
Hi, I'm Penny Mee Bishop. I'm a registrant member and I'm a pharmacy technician working in the hospital pharmacy sector.
Thank you. Elizabeth Maley. Okay, I think Elizabeth is still trying to log on. Jane Salt.
Hello everyone, my name is Jane Salt. I'm a lay member of council. My background is in the legal profession. I do some other work in the regulation of professionals, both healthcare and non-healthcare, principally in the area of fitness to practice or its equivalent. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you all this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Elizabeth Maley, who will be joining shortly, who is a pharmacist, and Selina Ula, who is a lay member. So thank you for that. So thank you, council members, for the introductions. We also have the Chief Executive, Duncan Rudkin, and our Director of Education and Standards, Matt Boyce, with us, as well as other senior colleagues from education and registration that will be on the panel today. They are all here because we want to hear from you. We want your feedback so that we can ensure this doesn't happen again. We also hope that we'll be able to answer some of your questions and give an overview of the current situation. This includes explaining what the options are if you are a candidate to experience major disruptions when you're taking your registration assessment. But first and foremost, this meeting is an opportunity for you, the candidates, to tell us about your experiences, give us your feedback, and for us to listen. So in a moment, we're going to hear from several trainee pharmacists, and our Chief Executive, Duncan Rudkin, is going to be facilitating that. So I will now hand over to Duncan. Thank you, Duncan. Over to you.
Thank you, Gisela, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening. I think the first thing I want to do is to add and reiterate my personal apology to all of you who had a bad experience with the registration assessment. I want to, as my colleagues have said, I want to hear from a number of you on behalf of really the whole community to illustrate and make sure that we hear what you went through so that we can do the best possible job in making sure that we address those issues going forward, as well as giving you all the information you need now. So I'm first of all just going to introduce a number of trainee pharmacists who've kindly agreed to share individual experiences with us. First of all, can I ask Ellie Simpson to just tell us about what happened for you, Ellie?
Okay, so my test centre was in Nottingham, which was chosen and booked for me as I am eligible to have my own room with extra time due to having dyslexia, dyspraxia and attention deficit. So my original test centre within Nottingham was changed a week before the exam without explanation. On exam day, I arrived ready and fully prepared at the new test centre to sit the exam, to then be sat all day, approximately 8 hours in a lecture theatre that was initially dark for 2 hours. As I was in exam conditions, I was told to sit in silence. The room was hot, poorly ventilated with no windows. Time elapsed, there was little explanation given about the cause of the delay. Kept being told the exam would start soon. I was becoming restless, agitated, apprehensive as I did not know what was happening. I felt horrified that GPhC could not be contacted and helpless because there was no GPhC representative to provide reassurance. I had no food with me. I had to sip water. And then at 4:45 p.m, I was told to start the exam. I felt really conflicted about whether to do the exam, as mine totaled 5 hours and 37 minutes. So potentially I would have no break and my exam could finish after midnight. But I thought to myself, I've waited this long, I might as well do it despite the significant delay. As I was hungry, I asked the invigilator whether I could eat the pizza that was ordered before doing the exam, which I did. I ended up starting the maths exam after 5:40 p.m. The monitor was very bright, it was hard to focus. I asked the invigilator in the room with me if the brightness could be turned down, but they were clueless about this and could not help me. So I just carried on with the exam as I was losing time. The computer mouse was lagging when highlighting key information on the questions, which was really frustrating. And then suddenly during the exam, I had to quickly run to the toilet where I was actually physically sick. So like the day's events had finally caught up with me. When I came out of the toilet, I broke down crying, very distraught because I had waited so many hours to do this exam for it to be taken away from me. I felt very weak and exhausted and made the wholehearted decision to withdraw from the exam because I then felt I could not perform to the best of my ability. I felt cheated and denied of the opportunity of taking the examination I had fully prepared for because of this blunder. I would have expected better in terms of the chaos being sorted out more efficiently under the circumstances. There needs to be accountability as the arrangements have fallen short in terms of who is responsible for such a mess on such a magnitude, and one would hope this does not happen again. I do continue to feel psychologically traumatized by what has happened. I cannot sleep and I have this constant worry and anxiety about my future to be a pharmacist. Results day is this week, which will be very emotional for me, as I will not be receiving any results like my peers. I feel as though I have been left behind. I'm now in a position where I'm going to have to revise again, which I'm dreading, and relive this trauma. I will have to juggle this with having a full-time job. I feel under intense pressure to pass this next attempt. It is very unfair that I must wait until November to sit an exam that I had fully prepared for in June. I spent a fortune on revision aids, mocks, and online lessons in the evening after an exhausting day at work. I've used all my 4 weeks leave just to study. I had no leave left to recover from this situation. I had to go back to work and carry on like nothing had happened. As the examination venue was selected for me, I would be completely horrified if I must sit my examination at the same venue. I just want to say finally that I spent a year doing pre-reg and 4 years at university to obtain a first-class degree. For my last 2 years of university, this was under challenging conditions due to COVID-19. After everything that I've been through, it is unfair that this one exam determines if I can be a practicing pharmacist. This exam is not a good determinant whether you are a good pharmacist or not. I've worked alongside my designated supervisor and many pharmacists who have never sat the pre-reg exam. However, they're all competent pharmacists because of years of experience and practice. I have been penalised for a significant error beyond my control. Whereas do fail me on this in terms of how this could happen to me. GPhC really needs to review the exam process as it's not currently fit for purpose, given the continuous problems that keep happening. This is such a high stakes exam. The pressure is immense, so something needs to change. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ellie. What you describe is horrific, and I'm truly sorry for what you went through. As I'm sure all my colleagues are, we've heard every word you've shared with us, and thank you for doing that. Can I go next, please, to Faris Osman?
Hi, so I sat my exam in East London in a test centre, and I'm also eligible for reasonable adjustment because of my condition. And when I applied for that, I was obviously assured that the GPhC would do its best to accommodate my needs. On the day of the exam, obviously, I made it very clear that I require, a room with fewer people, a small room. But when I went, it wasn't the case, and I was put in a bigger room with more people. That's number one. Number two, I don't know why they decided to put me by the door. So I was sat right by the door. So anybody gets up, they come past me. I don't know who decide who said where, but if someone has requested to be in a special room under special circumstance, then obviously it's only fair to make sure you accommodate that. At least don't put them by the door. And also the test center where I was, it was a big test center. Other tests were going on, so people were walking up and down the corridor. That also obviously added extra pressure and this distraction in general. In addition to that, invigilators were also on occasions were whispering and talking, and we can still hear them. And that again was very distracting and very disturbing, especially when I was doing paper one. Everything was going on, obviously it just made me very anxious and stressed, and that also gave me a bad headache. I had to take regular breaks during paper two, and I wasn't able to focus on performing to the best of my ability. I've prepared for this 4 years at university, 1 year of training. I have done so many mocks. I've invested so much. I'm married, I have a child. Just leading to the exam, I wasn't able to see my family. I used to work 6 days a week for my training place, and I finish at 6 and go to the library to study. So I have done my part. I have prepared, I have invested time and money. I feel like I've let my family down because I wasn't able to see my son on occasion because I have to come back home late and he's asleep. And on the exam, the circumstances wasn't ideal. I wasn't really provided what I was supposed to get. And also the invigilators were really bad in terms of the treatment. When we asked for papers to help us with the maths question in paper 1, they were really slow. They were giving one paper at a time, and I have to like put my hand up, and he has to walk up to me, and I ask for paper, and he has to walk back and bring the paper, and that also just wasted my time, and I was getting even more anxious and more stressed. I think this needs to be reviewed. This can't keep happening. We've done so much, and it's just not fair for us going through everything. Exams, we've passed our university, our school, we've done our pre-reg, we got signed off as competency, we've practiced in real life. I think the exam in itself needs to be reviewed. The way we are assessed, that's not really a real determinant of our capabilities and competency. Just one paper, one day, 2 hours and 2 hours, and then decide your entire future. Especially bear in mind that you only have 3 attempts. So something needs to be done, please. That's number one. Number two, I just have a question. Why do we have to retake, let's say, for example, someone passes clinical paper and they get 90%, but they failed maths paper by 1. Why do you have to retake both papers? I don't see the logic behind that. I don't understand it. In university, school, A-levels, GCSEs, you only retake what you failed. The 2 papers are entirely separate. So I don't really understand what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Faris. We will absolutely come back to answer your question about the 2 papers. So we won't forget about that. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Can I next call on Sarah Alatbi, please, Sarah?
So I want to just start off by saying thank you for organising this. And just to give you a bit of background about myself, I am a dyslexic student, and this has been honoured by the GPhC by giving me extra time. The points I'd like to come across today is about the untrained staff, the environment that I was put in, as well as the lack of accommodation to my disability, and the system that was used. So initially, when I entered the exam hall, we were just asked for IDs. Our calculators weren't actually checked. And we were given a sheet of paper that just said a number, and we were told to go upstairs. And I'd gone upstairs where there was 2 rooms. I'd noticed there were 2 rooms. So I went to the first room and tried to get an invigilator, and it probably took me about 2 to 3 minutes because they were busy with other students. And then I was told I wasn't in the room. And then I went into the next room where, again, I wasn't actually greeted by an invigilator. And then I had to find one again, and then I was seated. Once I was seated, I'd noticed that the invigilators had already explained everything, bearing in mind I was actually early, I wasn't late, and they didn't repeat any of the instructions. All I could see was a code at the front of the hall, which I was signed. I was at the front row. I remember number 3. And I put my hand up, and so had a few other students, and they hadn't come to me. So I found a sheet of paper and I realized that there was different codes, and I'd sorted that out, which is absolutely fine. You know, I did it myself. But what really made me distressed is that I could see the students around me had already started the exam, and I'd never done an exam where other students had started before me, and I wasn't given any instructions. And that's the first thing that really put me off. Throughout the whole exam, the invigilators were actually whispering, and one of the invigilators' phones was actually pinging. I remember I looked up to him because I was right in front of them, and then he put it on silent. Now, that's not the worst of it, because it actually gets even worse in terms of noise levels. When the non-dyslexic students had actually finished, all our bags were actually at the front. And this is why I say the environment that we were put in wasn't really easy for me, because everyone was walking past me when they were grabbing their bags, and they all started talking at the same time. They started creating little groups, and I'm assuming some of them knew each other, and they just started having normal conversations about, you know, how the exam was hard and how they didn't know this, and we were still in an exam. All the other dyslexic students were still doing an exam, and I think there must have been about 3 to 4 of us. Then to proceed, they actually walked outside where the doors were wide open, and they all started talking. They were just stood there talking, and no one said anything. And as you can appreciate, this is a very time sensitive exam, and I was struggling to fathom how this could happen, because I was shaking. I remember I was shaking, and I was going to have a panic attack, because in the past I've suffered with anxiety, and I was going to have a panic attack. I just had to bring myself together and just finish the exam. And again, no one did anything. And I remember under my breath, I was like, is this a joke? Like, this can't be happening. This isn't real. But I remember the invigilator got up and someone had ushered them, but by that point I'd lost complete focus, and I could see other students were looking around, the ones that were still doing an exam. I remember that, I know I was just saying about how I felt after. I remember running into the toilet and I was actually sobbing, and I don't usually cry over exams because that's not the type of person I am. You know, I take it with my stride, but I was sobbing to the phone to my fiance because it was just such an overwhelming feeling. Now I pulled myself together, and I had obviously the clinical paper, and the invigilator actually acknowledged the unacceptable noise, because she did say, you know, I've had a few more complaints and the level of noise was unacceptable. Please, can you make sure that you go outside of the building before you start to talk? Now, as you can imagine, I've got 20 to 30 minutes left for my exam. I think it's 20. I've got a few questions left. And exactly the same thing happens. They grab their bags, they're all talking, everyone's huddled outside the room. And then to top it all off, an invigilator, I'm assuming everyone upstairs had finished, the invigilator had come downstairs and they're all talking between themselves, shouting like no one's doing this exam. And there were still people, dyslexic students still doing the exam, and no one cared. Like, I honestly don't understand. In my whole academic career, that's never happened to me. This is like a failure of being accommodating towards a disability. And I genuinely feel discriminated against. I feel so awful. Like, I've genuinely underperformed because it was an unacceptable level of noise. I lost complete focus, and I was so anxious by that point. Not only that, just to mention about going back to the system that was used, some of the questions that I had flagged, I went back because there was a section where you could click on flagged questions. When I'd clicked it, it stated that I hadn't flagged any, so I had to manually go through 120 questions to find the ones that I'd flagged. And that was, and not forgetting, just like the other lady said, it kept lagging. There was such a massive lag on my computer, and I was honestly so stressed out. I just wanted to finish the exam, and honestly, I finished the exam and I felt completely drained, absolutely exhausted, because it's never happened to me. It's never, ever happened to me. I really do urge the GPhC to, you know, respond to this, because it's actually affected my exam performance. And I know it's affected other students as well, because the amount of level of noise and how noisy it was isn't acceptable. It's never happened in my whole academic career. It's just not acceptable. You know, it's knocked my confidence down. I went back and I remember thinking, like, do I really want to do pharmacy? Like, is this, you know, is this an organisation that are going to look after me? I feel completely let down. I just want reassurance that if I do need to resit this exam, which is really unfortunate because I have put the effort in. I know I'm a very smart, intelligent woman. You know, I graduated from a prestige university with a first class honours. You know, I want to know that this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And certainly I would echo the word used, completely unacceptable. Thank you for telling us that account. Can I go next, please, to Monica Bansal? Monica.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi. So, like the exams, before the exams, we were all nervous, but like I was excited too, because it was ultimately the D-Day when you can show, like this is the last step towards achieving your dream. Everything went smooth, and started my exam. We went into the examination hall, and then we were made to sit and everything. And then after the examiner gave us all the details how to go about the exam, they gave us the pin to put it in. And we have been instilled as students like, oh, once you put the pin in, that's the kind of that you agree to do the exam, and there's no going back. So I put the pin in like everybody else, and then my screen just went gray. There was nothing happening. And so I just thought maybe it's normal. And it was like few minutes, and then it turned into 5 minutes, then into 10 minutes. And then I raised my hand to call the IT guy, and he came. He's like, don't worry, give it a few more minutes and it'll be fine. And then when I called him, I just turned around and saw that everybody else is getting on with their exam. They have started doing their exam, and I was still looking at a gray screen. They I started panicking that time. I mean, I was still thinking, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But then it turned around, I think around like 15, 20 minutes. And then when it started, like I started really panicking. I was shaking. This has never happened to me before. So I couldn't realize what's happening actually. So I was actually thinking that this is my dream gone. This is the end of everything. And then the lady came, she said, oh, you have to collect your stuff and come out with us. So I was like, yeah, that's the end of now. So I went with the lady, collected all my stuff, and I mean, my mind was not there. My heart was racing, and I didn't know what to do. Now I'm talking to you, I can still feel that thing. I can really relive the situation again. I went in and said, oh, just sit down here and you have to wait here because we are contacting GPhC to see what can be done. So I waited because there was nothing else I could have done. So I waited, and they said like, okay, we are still getting on with them. They said, oh, if I need some water or something, I was like, no, I'm fine. And then they after like maybe 10, 15 minutes, they said, okay, you can start the exam now. We'll take you to the examination hall. So I was like, yeah, fine. So by that time, I recomposed myself. I was like, no, this is it. It's okay. It's happened, but now I have to recompose. But then I think my physical symptoms took over my mental strength and perseverance, and I was still shaking. I couldn't control myself, but I was like, okay, no, I have to give my exam. I sat, and they made me sit in a different seating place. I sat there, put the pin in again, the screen froze again. And I was like, no, this can't be happening again. Then anyways, it's after 2-3 minutes, it started working. The thing, and I could start my exam. I was given those extra minutes, but my symptoms, my palpitations, my heartbeat, my that feeling of loss just took over me, and I think it impacted my performance. I was prepared. When I walked into that test center, I walked in with confidence. I walked in with that kind of thing. Yes, today is the day when, it's a D-Day. This is what we have prepared for so long. This is the day when I am going to achieve my dream to work in UK as a pharmacist. And once everybody else finished my exam, I was still doing my exam. As soon as they finished, everybody started turning around each other because I think they were from the same university or something, and they all started talking to each other, saying like how tough the exam was, and they could have done better, or this question was not like that. There was a twist in that question, and I had to raise my hand to call the IT guy to tell that, please, can you tell these people to stop talking, because I'm still doing my exam. But because they have already finished that exam, it gave me that feeling that I'm lagging behind. Mentally, it was me that I was thinking, oh, I have to rush because everybody has finished their exam. I still had time to do my exam, but it gave me that mental, that psychological thing that, oh, I have to finish my exam. So I did finish my exam, but the maths exam was nothing. I don't want to go into the framework. The maths exam was nothing we prepared before. I'm not like 100% achiever, but I'm like more than 90% one. So I'm not somebody who will struggle to pass, but looking at that maths exam was like, I thought it's just my nerves, but when I came out of the exam center and we spoke and everything, so everybody felt the same thing. And then we have to give my clinical exam. So it was, those nerves did play up. That technical fault, that technical issue would happen was not my fault. I was ready for my exam. I did my best. I could not have done anything more to do it. So I gave my 100% for that exam, but because of the technical issue, it just, the start was so bad, and I think it was like a domino effect. It just affected my performance and this thing. So yeah, that's what my experience was. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. I'm going to go next to Faiza Nassar. Faiza.
Hi, yes. So when I was booking my exam, I live in Derby, and the nearest centre to me was Nottingham. But when I was booking my exam, I couldn't get any place in Nottingham. So I had to book my centre as Manchester, which is 2 hours away from where I live. So I was happy at least I got a centre to give my exam. And on the day of the exam, I had to leave. I'm a single mom. I had to leave my kids, obviously, childcare, to drive up to Manchester to give my exam. It wasn't an issue because obviously we worked very hard to give this exam. And my exam center was in Manchester. And when I reached my exam center, everything was fine. The invigilator checked the IDs, and they gave us a pin to enter on the computer screen, and everything was fine. Started doing my calculation paper, and on my 24th question, my computer switched off. And I quickly called the invigilator and I said my computer switched off. And she said, I'm just going to get someone to sort it out. And the computer came back on, and I asked her, so the answers I've done before, are they saved? She said she's not sure and she would want me to check. So I lost the time while my computer was switched off. Then I went back 24 questions to make sure my answers were saved, losing time there. And I asked her, will I be given extra time? She said, no, when the timer stops, the exam finishes. I rushed into doing my calculation paper. I couldn't complete the paper. I even don't know the questions that I did after my computer switched off, because I went into a very panic mode. And I think it's very natural because every question is timed 3 minutes. After that, we had to break for an hour and a half. And then I was a bit upset whether I should sit for the clinical paper or no. But then I just said that I should do it. I did sit for the clinical paper. I flagged some questions while doing my clinical paper, and there was a lot of noise. I'm going to be honest, there were students sitting behind me who were talking during the exam. There was only one invigilator in a room. I called her and I said, can I get some earplugs? She said, yeah. She gave me those, the small ones. I plugged them in my ear, started doing my paper again. Some of the questions I'd flagged while I was doing the paper, my answers were not saved. And I remember the invigilator standing with me and going back to each question to see why the answers were not being saved. Obviously, that was a mess. For me, there, I lost the confidence in me. For me, there, I was saying, 5 years of uni, I have been an oncology pharmacist in my country for 10 years, and come down to this day where I was very disappointed that the systems, there were glitches in the system, that invigilators were not sure what to do in case there's something wrong with the system. They were not trained for this. Obviously, I was very eager to give this exam, to pass this exam, to be a pharmacist, to be a help to the community. But I know the results in 3 days, and I know what I have done in the exam, and I know what my results going to be. I couldn't complete my calculation paper. And I agree that mistakes happened. I agree that the mistakes have happened. And I think the students of this year, they have completely lost their confidence in GPhC. And you guys have apologized, which is great. I think we all have accepted the apology. But my question now is, moving forward, what do we do? Whatever happened that day was not our fault. We came in prepared to give the exam. And I think going 5 days of uni and training as a pre-reg shows us that we are compatible to be pharmacists. Once I finished my exam, I asked the invigilator, I need to fill in the incident paper. She said that I'm going to have to wait. Now, I had left my kids at home with a childminder who was supposed to leave at 6 o'clock. I had a 2-hour drive back home. I did not get a chance to fill the incident paper. Now, my question here is, I didn't get a chance to fill the incident paper. I did send a long email to the GPhC, never got a reply to ask them that I didn't get a chance to fill the incident paper. So what happens from now on? And I never got a reply. Till date, I never got a reply. My question to GPhC is, what happens in case I fail the exam? Obviously, because it wasn't my mistake. I mean, as a pharmacist, we need to be very confident in our governing body, which is the GPhC. And I don't want to point fingers, and I'm grateful of everything that you do as a governing body to all the people who are already pharmacists and the ones who are struggling to be the pharmacists. But the exam was comparatively hard as compared to the sample paper that was on the website. And I think there needs to be a big change for us to get the confidence back with GPhC, because somewhere it's lost, it's shaken. And I know people have gone through very terrible experiences. For me, while driving back home, I knew that I lost it. I lost the day. I lost my exam, and but then questioning myself that it wasn't completely my fault. I think moving forward, the GPhC should provisionally register everyone to regain the confidence back, because without the governing bodies, we can't operate. So we need to win. We need the GPhC to set a strategy in such a way that everybody gets their confidence back. So I think people who have failed for whatever reason should be provisionally registered, so they have a job as well. Everyone, so they have a job as well, and they will be ready to prepare for the exam next sitting in November. And when I asked the invigilator in the examination center that how long do I have to wait to fill the incident report, she said it's going to be 30 to 40-minute wait. I could, to be honest, I couldn't wait. I had kids waiting back home. I don't have a family in this country. My priority was to be home to the children. So I left. So my concern is what happens once the result comes out. What happens if I fail the exam? Because it's not completely my fault. My computer stopped during my calculation exam. My answers were not saved during my clinical exam. And they were not ready to give me any extra time. There was noise. The earplugs were not, they didn't help me. So these are my concerns. And I think moving forward, the GPhC needs to take account into how everybody has suffered, and what they should do as a whole to make sure that everybody is treated fair.
Thank you, Faiza. Thank you very much for that. We will go in a minute to cover some of the answers to your questions about what happens next. And colleagues of mine have made a note as well to chase up that email that you've not had a reply to, and I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm going to move on now to Angelina Owusu. Angelina, are you there?
Hiya. So yeah, my name is Angelina, and first of all, I would like to say a massive thank you to the RPS for allowing me to share my experience with the GPhC. Okay, so during my paper one, approximately about 30 minutes before the exam, I first got a notification that my computer would turn off in 5 minutes to save power. So I immediately informed the invigilator in the room with me. I did panic a little bit because I did not expect it. And I wasn't sure what would happen to the questions I had done and having done. So for example, would it automatically submit my answers, and how that would impact my grade, because some flagged questions were yet to be answered. The invigilator, of course, came to have a look at my screen, but the notification disappeared. So we both assumed that that was the end of it. I then proceeded to continue, but the notification came back again after 4 minutes, this time saying that my computer would turn off in 1 minute. I called the invigilator again, and this time I was really panicking because I had a timer telling me that the computer was going to shut down. She came over again, she decided to, play around with the plugs, nothing, to see if the notification would go away. Nothing happened. She then tried to use the keyboards to override the notification, but nothing happened again. And eventually the computer screen turned off. I was literally shaking and my palms were sweating. My heart rate was sky high because I do suffer from anxiety, like medically diagnosed. And hence one of the reasons why I sit exams in an isolated room by myself. So I really tried my best to be in the best position to sit this exam, because obviously I know the importance of it. How she resolved it, obviously the computer was placed on top of a laptop. So she then removed the computer and then opened the closed laptop and touched the keyboards on the laptop. That's when the computer screen came back on. At that time, I think I had lost about 5 minutes while she was trying to figure all these things out. So after such an unexpected incident, it became extremely difficult to keep my anxiousness down. But I did try to compose myself and get through the rest of the questions. However, I believe that my marks on paper one particularly would be affected by this. To what degree, I cannot tell until I see my results on Friday. And in addition to the computer screen turning off, this happened again in my paper too. And but it was resolved quicker because I had told the invigilator prior to starting the second paper about what had just happened in my paper one. And also because I'd already experienced this issue, I was better prepared emotionally. And hence that's one of my reasons for not filling in 2 incident forms. Also, I believe that the invigilator who witnessed the paper one incident was very incompetent because she did not even ask me to fill in an incident form. It was not until I spoke to another invigilator was I then advised to do so and take a picture of the form as evidence. Therefore, my request is for the GPhC to train invigilators on what to do if issues like this arise in the future, because I'm not going to lie, the invigilator not knowing what to do really just increased my anxiety. And at the end of the exam, I did call the GPhC and I asked for advice, and I was told that I could nullify the sit within 5 working days. However, I personally did not go ahead with that because I did not understand why I would have to do that when it was not my fault. As far as I'm concerned, the computer screen should not have gone off because it was still in use. And I just have a quick question. And my question is, while I empathize with the students from like Nottingham and other centres who had the extreme delays, what would happen to students who, although did not have extreme delays, were equally affected by other factors, such as screen turning off during like both papers in my case? So that's my question to the GPhC. And to conclude, I would like to, I think the GPhC to just reassess the procedures that they currently have in place and improve on them for the future. So that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Angelina. Really helpful to hear your account of your experience, and we will come back to your question as well. So thank you. And finally, can I ask Jeremy Lamb to share your experience, Jeremy?
Thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is Jeremy, and I'm one of the unfortunate candidates sitting the exam in Jubilee campus. And the first speaker has probably summed up what has happened, so I won't be dwelling into description, but rather like showing a statement, rather than speaking about a statement, and also and question GPhC in this sort of cases. So the following statement is made on behalf of all cohorts sitting in the same exam venue, which is on the Jubilee campus, and it would take ages to dwell into the detail. So I would just summarize. Our exam has been delayed for over 8.5 hours. And throughout the wait, we're dehydrated, starved, and there was zero support from the invigilators and the GPhC. We're only finally allowed to eat pizzas the invigilators ordered after the calculation exam in response to the cohort's complaint. And most importantly, candidates that were granted extended time, they were forced to finish the clinical exam 30 minutes early. We can only see poor planning, preparation, communication, and basically lack of staff training from this whole event. So there are several key points I would like to talk about. And firstly, there are different problems driven by the invigilators, from the lack of training to unprofessionalism. So some invigilators were really unhelpful, and all of their answers were really vague and ambiguous. Like, for example, when we ask how long is the delay going to be, they just responded with, the exam will start soon in half to a half hour, but they have basically repeated the same thing all the time. And when we asked them about what has happened throughout the whole event, they were mentioning it's a technical issue, but it's basically worse, much worse than that, because the equipment literally arrived 2 hours after the original start time, and they have to spend another 4 hours to set things up. And invigilators were also talking to each other during the calculation and clinical exams, which is extremely annoying. And some invigilators were smirking and recording us while we're in the waiting room. Secondly, it's about the lack of welfare provision. We were completely starved and dehydrated. We're basically unfit to sit, but we're still resilient and decide to sit, especially the calculation exam, which started at 5:15 in the afternoon in an empty stomach. And everyone knows that you really can't calculate efficiently and properly when you're tired, starved, and dehydrated. We have cohorts broke down during and after the exam, and basically there is zero support from the invigilators at all. They just look at us and basically do nothing. And thirdly, we also had to deal with the mental and physical issues, which is caused by the result of this event. Like, even after the exam, we have to deal with the cheating accusation from other candidates sitting from other test centers. The GPhC has never ever tried to clarify or at least mention the accusations were completely baseless. And if someone actually have any evidences, they could have just sent it to the GPhC to verify directly. And basically, this has caused a massive impact to all of cohorts' mental health. We felt like we're being wrongfully blamed, and basically there was zero support at all. And the nullification and provisional registration doesn't really address the underlying issue of the training or the lack of communication from the GPhC. The GPhC should be accountable, and at this point, we believe what the GPhC has done is bare minimal, and they're basically trying to sweep things under the rug. They haven't really addressed or even mentioned about the cohorts with extended time being forced to enter exam 30 minutes prior. We believe there should be an adjustment in marks in this case because it's almost a guaranteed failure for all of these candidates. We also have candidates having to miss their flights or to book an accommodation because there were no transportation by the time we finish our exam at 11 at night. There should be a compensation to the missing travel or the cost of accommodation due to the incompetence, which is none of our fault. And by this point, a lot of us have lost all hopes and confidence in the GPhC. We believe the GPhC should be much more transparent in the future and show us how they can improve to prevent these sort of tragedy from ever happening again. They should give regular updates on how they provide training to other exam coordinators like BTL or TeamCo. The GPhC should also review on registration process to ensure the future exam starts on time. They should also assess both examination room and the rating room to ensure they met requirement as a formal assessment room. The invigilators should receive training and guidance for the exam process, which includes contingency plan in event of emergencies. They should receive training on professional behaviors, and all bodies, which includes BTL, TeamCo, and GPhC, must review and revise their communication with clear lines of responsibility. We also believe the GPhC should have at least one representative in every test center to at least assist and take charge of the assessment, and should plan on the welfare, health, and safety of candidates. There should be a lead invigilator present to assist and help with distressed candidates throughout the day of the examination. And there should ideally be a registered pharmacist with an understanding of how the high stake of this exam. And there should also be mental health first aid or representative from the pharmacy support present at the center. And honestly speaking, disappointment was actually an understatement to describe how we feel about this exam and also the GPhC. Can the GPhC promise to improve and ensure event to this extent will never ever happen again, to rebuild our trust and their reputation? Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's a really powerful challenge, and all of the suggestions and expectations that you've set out there for us are very much ones that we're working on intensely in order that we can do exactly what you've asked of us. So thank you to all the candidates for sharing your experiences with us. It must have been very challenging to do that, and you've relived some very distressing experiences. I think it's really powerful for us to hear all of that, for my staff colleagues and council members to hear your experiences, so that first of all we can understand the impact of what's happened on you as individuals. Secondly, so that we can work to make amends as best we can in the short term, and also to make sure that we learn those lessons in the way that Jeremy was just quite rightly challenging us to do. When we think about the registration assessment, we want this to be a fair chance for all of you and your colleagues to show that you meet the standard to become a pharmacist. And that sense of anticipation, almost excitement, that I think some of you have described was very powerful. We want to welcome you to your chosen profession and for you to have a fair attempt at showing that you meet the standard. I'm very sorry to all of those of you who've experienced such terrible experiences. We have taken a number of actions so far under the guidance of the Council, which we've communicated with you, and there are lots of pieces of information about this on the homepage of our website. I will just briefly mention a few key points. We've heard about candidates who've experienced significant delays, and we've set out that for those who are unfortunately unsuccessful, they will be able to join the provisional register if they're eligible. This sitting won't count as one of their attempts, and there will be a refund. But equally, we know that there are candidates in a range of other centres who, not necessarily in a cohort, who all experienced major delay, but experienced individual serious issues. And we've heard from some of you this evening. The Council has agreed that candidates in that position who are on an individual appeal show that they've experienced that kind of major disruption. And if you're not successful, then you will be treated exactly in the same way, with the offer of provisional registration if eligible, a full refund, and the sitting not to count as one of your attempts. Additionally, we know that a number of candidates are very anxious about the 8-year rule. This is something we need to look at generally, but the Council has already taken on board the concerns of candidates who are anxious about the 8-year rule impacting upon them potentially during the course of the next few months. So the Council has agreed to extend that period by 12 months, so that nobody in this cohort should be anxious about the 8-year rule. I know that there will be heightened anxiety and concern as you wait for your results. I do wish you all the very best with your results, and I know that if you're unsuccessful, that will be very difficult news. We have got a programme of work in hand looking at all of the issues which Jeremy and other colleagues have raised. We will be providing information over the course of coming weeks and months about a very different set of arrangements for the November sitting, so that we can give that confidence and start to rebuild your confidence in us. We know that many of you have been anxious and continue to be anxious, and the GPhC can provide information, and we need to do that and keep doing that as well as we can, and in some cases better. But there are other colleagues around as well who are very much focused on supporting you. And one of those organisations is Pharmacist Support.